Hey there, everybody. This is Renessa Bully Lane, and welcome to another conversation on creating your perfect work. I am delighted to be here, and if you know anything about me, you know that I'm all about how to help you discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love, whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. And so I'm super, super duper excited about this conversation, in part because of the topic. We're going to talk all about how to sell yourself. And I'll tell you now that you're going to be surprised because it's not necessarily what you think, I think conventionally around selling yourself, but it is going to be such a beautiful, brilliant, empowering conversation. And so I'm so delighted. And even as I think about myself, when I was first making major transitions, when I was going from my corporate career and kind of stepping into entrepreneurship very clumsily, the biggest issue I had was how to sell myself. And not from a prospect standpoint, but really from all the things that we're going to talk about today. I just really wasn't strong in that. And so get your pen and paper handy. This is going to be an amazing conversation. We're going to have so much fun. So I want to introduce my guest today. It's Kim Peterson. And if you wonder why we're both looking all crunchy, it's because Kim has this beautiful dog named Doc, he's a Bernie Doodle, right?
Yes, Dr. Prescott.
His name is Dr. Prescott, and for whatever reason, Doc is in residence today in her office, and she's trying to keep him quiet with these doggy treats. So over the course of this conversation, we might just have another visitor or another expert on the call, and if so, he's so cute, and so you guys will all love him. But with that, I want to introduce our guest, Kim Peterson. I'm super excited about having Kim here. She is not only one of the most beautiful people, you know, she's stunning, but she's beautiful on the inside and out. And I've known her for a number of years, and I handpicked her to be on this conversation because I believe that her life and her work are going to inspire you. And they're going to inspire you as you think about your own life and your work. But just to give you a bit of background, Kim Peterson is a 425 magazine woman to watch, and what is there not to watch? She started her image consultancy while homeless 19 years ago. And today, high achievers, emerging leaders, and leaders across various industries work with Kim when they want to increase their confidence, their credibility, and their success with greater ease. Kim is a keynote speaker. She's a trainer. She's a personal brand and style consultant with over 30 years of experience in the image industry. Kim's individual clients have included senior VPs at companies like Microsoft, Boeing, T-Mobile, and beyond. So she's got the chops. She knows her stuff. She's also, let me just tell you what I think about Kim. So that's all the bio stuff. Here's why I invited Kim to be part of this conversation. Kim's story is so remarkable. It's a remarkable story of resilience. It's a remarkable story of overcoming. It's a remarkable story of triumph. It's a remarkable story of finding your own voice, and being a champion for yourself, and in being a champion for yourself, being a champion for so many others. And there's a lot of us on the call that we are thinking about major transitions, whether it's, you know, stepping into a new career, launching our business. We have a message that we want to bring to the marketplace, and you wonder, can people hear me? Can they see me? Do I matter? And all of Kim's life is just the epitome of that. And she has a gift to help other people be seen and be heard and be champions for their lives as well. And so I just think everything about her is awesome. And I want you to be able to get a glimpse of that. And I want you to be inspired to step up in whatever that calling is for you. And so that's why she's here. Get your pen and paper handy. She's going to drop some really, really beautiful nuggets. And my hope is that one great idea will catapult you into doing your perfect work as well. So with that, Kim, I just want to welcome you and thank you for joining our platform and being a part of this conversation.
Wow, well, thank you for having me. And truly what an honor and how humbling to hear your words over these years of being colleagues and friends. So thank you. It's a great program.
Absolutely. So the first question I just kind of want to open up, because this is a conversation around perfect work, right? And for those who this might be your first interview in the series, but when I say perfect work, I'm not talking about things all go perfectly, you know, that you have perfect employees or perfect coworkers or perfect bosses. Like, work can be challenging. We have all of those interpersonal things and, whatever. That's fine. When I talk about perfect work, I'm talking about the career or business or mission that you know that you were born to lead, that everything about you is designed and equipped so perfectly for you to go out and make that particular difference in the marketplace. That's perfect work. And I am so committed to helping people find that. And so for Kim, you've been doing this work for a long time and it's evolved in different ways. Mm-hmm. How do you know that the work that you're doing right now is indeed your perfect work? And again, it could evolve and shift, 5 years down the line, but how do you know right now that what you're doing is the mountain that you were born to climb?
That's a beautiful question, and it makes me teary, quite honestly. There's a few things that come to mind in response to that, but one is the most important, I think, is the ability to see true, sustainable, lasting transformation in people, mm-hmm. right? So when my work actually has that impact, whether it's wardrobing and styling and there's an increase of confidence, mm-hmm. Or whether it's really a breakthrough in mindset and a reframing that allows that person to step into the fullness of their potential or another step into their purpose and potential, those results are just what that is. Mm-hmm. And then on another hand, it's every bit of the adversity in my life, as well as every bit of the personal experience, the professional experience that has holistically come together, mm-hmm. that has allowed me to effectively step into this work. It's almost like none of my life experiences, as hard as they could have been and as hard as they were in vain. So it's like everything is being used. I'm not a cook, but it's kind of like if you're in the kitchen and you're going through the cupboards and the refrigerator and you're trying to find what to make, mm-hmm. and all the ingredients come together for something purposeful and beautiful. I that's how I feel about my work today. I haven't always felt that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about your story, because now you do style and you do image consulting and you do lots of things. But there's a story to how you even got to doing beauty work, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about your story and where you came from and how that evolved into the work that you're doing now.
Sure. So I'm going to give you all some high-level nuggets because it's just layered from really the time I was born. And, I just had such all the way up into my late 20s, just a life of compounding adversity, I call it. So I was adopted, I'm Black and Asian, and I was adopted into a white family when I was an infant. So I grew up never fitting in. I never fit in really with the white community and culture or the Black community and culture. I didn't even fit in my own family. So it's really hard to feel like you just don't belong and to have external conversations or things that support that. Mm-hmm. But when I was, 6 years old, my parents divorced. There were 5 of us kids. Parents divorced. Dad took the 2 middle kids. The 2 older kids lived on their own, and then I was suddenly an only child. So by the time I was 6, I had experienced rejection a lot, abandonment a lot. And then I grew up in poverty from grades 4 to 12, real poverty, like in condemned housing to where mom and I had to move out so they could literally tear down the homes. Yeah. So we were on, government assistance and those sorts of things where, kids at school would tease me. I was, what I would call overweight, understyled, and poor. And they were really hard on me for all the things. And so what I learned, Renessa, is that all of those things impact your self-esteem, your self-image, your mindset, and really, started leading into some depression and anxiety that compounded until here's the turning point. is, and I'm going to say this because the reality is that we struggle, and mental health is a big issue. So I just want to bring some gracious light to this, that I struggled with depression, and it took over my mindset so much so that in the subconscious, in my sleeping, I actually had a sleepwalking episode because I just was desperately trying to get out of this pain when I was 15. So what happened is that resulted in a sleepwalking episode whereby I ended up in my kitchen with a butcher knife because I wanted to take my life. But I want you to know that with chills, I say that that was a divine intervention, that it wasn't my time to go, apparently. And because I woke up. And I wasn't a sleepwalker. And so what I learned after that is I found this old, psalm that said, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes.
You are known." And for the first time in my life, I felt celebrated, and what does fearfully and wonderfully made? Well, it means uniquely savvy. That there's no one else who is like you. No one has your DNA. No one has your unique psychology or set of experiences that allow you to bring your uniqueness and your gifts and talents to the world. And I thought, well, how do I dress this? How do I dress this? So I started going to the thrift store, tearing a nickel into the quarter, and looking in the full length mirror. How do I dress, the beauty of my dark skin that was, that people made fun of? How do I dress my curves? How do I dress my creativity? How do I dress these different things? And so when I went on to college, I was first aspiring to be an attorney and then a psychologist, but I thought, I need to land on something that has really made a tremendous impact in my life so that I can take that and birth that out into the world. And that's when I decided to major in fashion, major in management, and minor in business so that I could have the very career and my own business that I have today.
Wow. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you. Feels like a miracle.
Isn't it, right?
Yeah.
There's beauty in the ashes, right? And here's what here's the point that I truly want to highlight. There's lots of nuggets that we could camp on. But when we talk about finding your sweet spot, you'll hear me say a lot this idea of finding sweet spot. And your sweet spot is that ideal role in a career or business that's going to give you the greatest fulfillment and the highest potential for income. And that looks different for everybody. And the sweet spot is a combination of, it's 4 questions. It's, what do I do best? What do I enjoy most? What's my story? And what's the market willing to pay for? And a lot of times when we're in the pursuit of work, in career, business, whatever, we oftentimes look at, well, what's the market willing to pay for? And then we try to get in where we fit in there. Like, what's the emerging markets, or, who's hiring and what are they hiring for? And so we find that where the money is, and then we try to twist ourselves up into a pretzel in order to fit, where the check is being cashed, so to speak. But I advocate, if you answer those first 3 questions first very authentically, you can find where you're meant to be.
Yes.
If you know what you do best, what you enjoy most, and what's your story, you get that right, then you can find the path to the cash. You can find because the market's willing to pay for anything. And so in Kim's story, she had the choice. Do I go try to be an attorney, a psychologist? And as a young person, we're at those pivot points as to what we're going to major and what we're going to do. And fortunately, she was wise enough, some of us are not, wise enough to figure that out in the beginning. But her story matters, right? And so the fact that her story on the surface was not a beautiful one, and in fact, it was very painful and all of that, but it's the very story that attracts her clients to her at whatever level they happen to be. And the irony is that even though there was all of these things that happened, the fact that now she is all about this doc, that she's all about making people beautiful. Like, oh, you could not have created a better script for somebody's life if you designed it, right? And we're all so uniquely designed. And so as you're listening to her story, and as we start to talk about selling yourself and all those kinds of things, my encouragement is to think about your own story. If you're at a moment of pivot and you're trying to figure out, well, what do I do? And I'm not sure, am I good enough? Am I qualified to do X, Y, or Z? Start to think about your story. Some of it, when I was a kid and it was 7 years old kind of stuff, but some of it may just be the story of your professional career. You may have taken 3 wheels around the track to finally get, past the bar exam. I don't know. That's part of your story.
Right.
Think about who you're supposed to serve.
Right.
Sometimes we want to hide the pieces of our story, but honestly, there is money in our message. And so that's the piece that I want people to really, there's now Kim gets paid for that story. Like, she gets paid on the stage to be able to tell that story. She gets paid from clients who resonate with who she's become as a result of that adversity. And so for all of us, we have a story. Do not underestimate that story, because that's a critical part of how you sell yourself to the world and how they embrace who you are and what you want to offer to it.
Right, absolutely. And to that point, I just want to say it's in mining the truth of your story, right? That you learn what your unique differentiators are.
Yeah.
Right. So even if it's something that was adverse, or maybe it was something amazing, maybe you've won awards and you're, you just have that perseverance and that tenacity to, fill in the blank. But if you're not willing to share those parts of the story, then nobody understands the mindset or the actual skills that are propelling you forward to say, oh, that's his or her mindset. That's who we want, all else being equal. Right?
Yeah. And I want to highlight what she said, because sometimes we think that the story has to be a story of woe. And the reality is that most of us, we meet each other at the point of misery. So we usually kind of commiserate, oh, she gets me, I was that way too. So sometimes there is a story of woe there. But on the flip side, it could be something totally amazing. I remember I had a client once who, she was interested in really fostering like healthy eating and wellness as a way of being able to achieve high performance in the corporate space, right? And so oftentimes when people are talking about health and wellness, they usually come from, well, I was 65 pounds overweight and I lost my weight, and that, like, they have this story of transformation. She'd never been that way. She'd always been healthy. She'd always eaten well. But the reason she'd eaten well is because the people in her family did not. And she saw, even as a young girl, she saw the effects of their decisions on their lives. And she made a decision as a young person that she never wanted to be that way. When she looked at her mom and her siblings and this or that. And so she actually lived a very, very disciplined life when it came to eating and those kinds of things and blah, blah, blah. There's still value in that message, because there's a lesson to be, like, she's got the fruit of a life well lived and decisions well made, where she's able to be that example. And so I say all that to say, because a huge part of selling ourselves to the world is being able to own our authentic story. And sometimes we show up inauthentic because we want to be what we think people want to hear, as opposed to, this is who I am, and there's beauty in who I am, whether it's good or bad or perceived whatever way, right?
Right, absolutely.
So let's talk about selling yourself, because you have this concept about selling yourself. And I want you to kind of bring us up to speed on where that concept even came from, and then what the components are of it. And then we'll take a deeper dive into each one of them and unpack them.
Sure. So I'll share this again. So when I started my business almost 20 years ago, I just was focusing on wardrobe and styling and really helping professionals to dress for success in a way that helped them increase their confidence and create those lasting, strong and positive first impressions. And that is good. And that is one element of the whole you and how you show up in the world. What I know to be true is that in 2008, my business expanded about 8 years later into the personal brand development arm of my business. And when we're talking about selling yourself, that's what we're really talking about, is discovering and harnessing your personal brand. Everybody has a personal brand, and your personal brand is about your identity. So as I teach about that now, personal branding really is people need to buy you first before they're going to buy your product or your service. So how do you best sell the brand called you? And that's an acronym I came up with. And the S stands for, how do you speak with confidence in impact? How do you speak in a way that articulates your value, tells people who you are, who you serve, and the results that you deliver, to name a few. The E in S.E.L.L stands for, how do you engage in alignment with who you are, with your unique skills, talents, abilities, personality, aspirations, vision, right? How do you engage in alignment, but also how do you engage in integrity, right? Integrity is so important when you're talking about who you want to be and accessing your authentic voice and showing up in the marketplace. And then the first L in S.E.L.L stands for look. How do you look? You want to make sure that for you as your brand, you look like who you are, your authentic self. You want to look like who you say you are. You want to look like your messaging. You want to also look the way that communicates. Your wardrobe is a tool and it's a communicator. So you want to look in a way that visually communicates your skills and your talents. Your wardrobe and appearance and your presence should really communicate to the outside world when there are no words to be spoken much about who you are. Because we know that research shows that people are always judging us within really 3 seconds these days. It's really quite minimal. So you want to use your wardrobe to communicate that for you. And then the last L in S.E.L.L is about living your unique genius out loud, right? Your unique genius is your unique savviness. It is your unique brilliance, right? So once you know how to speak and articulate your value, and you know how to engage in alignment with yourself, and you know how to dress as a reflection, it's all about holistically packaging yourself to live out loud. So how do you show up with consistency, constancy, and clarity, right? In a very clear and focused and powerful way. This is how you really then begin to attract the right opportunities, the right clients, the right talent.
Yeah.
Right. You get to be your authentic best and attract that into your sphere.
What do you notice? Because you've had the chance to work with so many people and navigate them through this process. And again, we're going to unpack each one of these and kind of take a deeper dive on them.
Sure.
But what do you notice are the common or the most common challenges for people when they're trying to speak with confidence and engage with alignment, look the part, like all of those pieces? What are the stumbling blocks for them from the onset that makes getting through that process difficult?
Right. You know, it really is the mindset piece.
Okay.
You know, and we'll talk about wardrobe again, but oftentimes we think, oh, well, let's go shopping. Let's get a new look. And that's very impactful for a variety of reasons. However, the mindset piece, am I good enough? Why do I think I have something to say? Who wants to hear me in the first place? So that's a big piece of it. And another big piece is, you know, we live in a culture where we are on autopilot. We wear so many hats. We don't slow down to consciously connect to who we are, the truth of who we are. And so we don't have a full understanding or even a solid understanding of, again, those unique skills and talents and gifts that really give you, if you will, the confidence to speak to the brand called you. So you have to, in my mind, in my opinion, you know, it's very valuable to stop and consciously connect through a series of exercises or conversations to really, figure out what those talents are, so you can feel like, okay, this is the truth about me. You and I had a conversation about it. It's about mining your truth. You have to dig for your truth. Go back through those professional layers. Go back through those personal layers of all these chapters and experiences to mine the truth of who you are. This is where the confidence comes from, right? Is when you know the truth of who you are and you can synthesize that, then it becomes easier to communicate that verbally and non-verbally and engage in that way.
Okay. So as we think about the S.E.L.L, right? The acronym of S.E.L.L, speak with confidence, engage, look the part, live your unique brilliance. I'm a firm believer that order matters, at times, and you used kind of the cooking analogy. And if you've got a recipe and you do the recipe sometimes in the wrong order, you don't quite get what the picture said you were supposed to get, right?
Yes.
So what's the first step? So if we're looking at this formula, looking the part may not necessarily be the first step. And I think you kind of alluded to this before, even though that might feel like the funnest step, right?
Right.
So where do we start, and how do we begin to even mine for that truth when it comes to what we're doing here?
Absolutely. The very most important step, again, that produces confidence and that is the most sustainable, step one, is to consciously connect.
Okay.
Who am I? What are my unique values, my value of proposition? How do I best articulate, my value? What are my values, by the way? Such a huge part of consciously connecting to who you are and understanding your truth is to understand your values personally and professionally. Your values will tell you what you're willing to fight for, right? And so the stronger those values are, again, the more connected to sense of self you will be, and then the subsequent steps will come into play with a little bit more ease.
Yeah. It's so interesting because when you talk about speaking with confidence, right? And when I look at when I was making major transitions, the last thing I was confident. And I remember hating networking events, and I used to be a part of BNI, was it Business Networking International or something? And so you go to these breakfasts, you go to breakfast once a week,
Right.
And you meet with these other entrepreneurs and people who, and some of them were career folks or whatever, but other professionals. And every day, every week, you'd have to stand up and give your elevator pitch as to who you are and what you did. And I just remember every night, like the night before BNI, I would have this big pit in my stomach because I knew that was the first thing that I was going to have to do the next morning. And I felt so uncomfortable. And it wasn't about public speaking. I've been speaking since I was a kid, but I felt so uncomfortable because I felt like I didn't know who I was. I knew what I did, but I wasn't sure if I was good at what I did. I wasn't sure if anybody else wanted. I just didn't have, I could not speak with confidence. I looked it, but I really wasn't it. And that created a tremendous amount of stress. And
right, absolutely, because there's a misalignment. And this is exactly where imposter syndrome can come in.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're presenting one way out here, and we all have done or do it. So just relating that we present something out here, but we don't really feel that way in here. That's where the mining of the truth sets you free internally. And out of that space, you can present more authentically externally.
Yeah. So some of the questions you mentioned about speaking with confidence, it's, who you are, who you serve, what do you deliver, also beginning to think about that. And as you think about, for folks that are listening, as you're thinking about switching careers or making a shift, start to understand those things about yourself. Who do I want to serve? Like, what customers do I want to support? Again, whether it's in a career, when you're working for a company and they have a customer base, and maybe it's internal customers or external, like, who do I really want to serve? What do I want to deliver to them? Because sometimes we're in the right company, but we're in the wrong role. And there
Mhm.
are other options in that company, other ways that you can serve. Everybody's not meant to go out there, start a business and hang out their shingle, right? But sometimes we don't recognize when we're not clear about what we want to deliver. We don't know that there could be opportunities right there in that organization that will happily have us because we've demonstrated value in some other part of the company. It's a lot easier than going out and trying to find a job at a different company with people you don't have relationships with. But these are things that you want to begin to get clear about, because then you can speak that with confidence.
Exactly.
And when you can speak with confidence, then you can enroll people to support you. And there's lots of folks who are willing to support us, but then we open our mouths and we sound so unsure. And it's
Right.
not about being sure of the how, but it is being sure about who I am and what I'm about and what I stand for. And when you can come with certainty in any conversation, the person with the most certainty wins. And so that speak with confidence piece is really critical. But in order to speak with confidence, there has to be an authenticity there. Otherwise, the confidence is out the door. Is that fair?
Right. It's so good. It's so good. And I will echo that with a quick illustration from my own scenario. Even again, at 8 years into business,
Yeah.
when we hit the recession, 2008, 2009, that's when my business expanded to include personal branding. And it was a time where I had to go back and ask myself these very same questions and get clear. One of the questions also, especially if you're an entrepreneur, is, what are the pain points of, my prospects or my clients, but also which of those prospects actually are going to value, again, my uniqueness.
Yeah.
What I learned is, this is why I tend to work with a lot of leaders and emerging leaders, because part of when I mine the truth of my story is, it's very results driven. Again, I had to be, coming out of poverty and then going to college and trying to make something different. So the tenacity, the perseverance, crossing the finish line, regardless of obstacles. Well, whose mindset aligns with that? Leaders and emerging leaders. Mm-hmm. So it helped me even in that time for myself to do another mindset shift. And that's who I work with most commonly now, because we're in alignment on that. Okay, yeah. Well, I know she's going to get across that hurdle for me to get this done, whatever that is.
Yeah, got it. So then when we talk about engaging with alignment and doing it with integrity, how do we start? What questions should people begin to ask themselves in order to verify whether they're aligned? Hi, Doc. We see him going back and forth. So what questions can people begin to ask themselves? Because sometimes we don't know that we're not aligned. Because sometimes we get into a direction and we think that's the way I should go. I got this degree, I got on this track, in my professional career, and I don't know what happened the last 10, 12, 15 years, but now I'm up the river this way. Mm-hmm. And isn't this what I'm supposed to want? Because now I have the kids and the house and the mortgage. And so we end up fastly in the wrong direction, but sometimes we don't even recognize that it's a misalignment. We think it's bad day, bad month, bad year, right?
Right.
So what questions can people begin to ask themselves to test whether or not the alignment is there?
Sure. Gosh, 3 come to mind just this quickly. One is, again, what are my values? Mm-hmm. Right? So when you begin to understand what your values are, what's important to you, it will be easy then to look to see, well, does my career choices align with this?
Yeah.
Am I working with a company or an organization whose values also align with mine? Number one. Even in terms of, if you value family, if you say, I value family and relationship and being there for my kids, but when you look at your schedule, you're actually out and away from family activity a good bit of the time, you can see that doesn't align, mm-hmm. right? And so that's one thing. Another is also what gives you energy and what gives you joy, really, right? So if you find that you are coming home drained quite a bit or feeling dissatisfied or unfulfilled, that's a good indication to stop and pause And rather than sort of cycle down in that negative mindset, start to ask, well, what actually brings me joy? What fills me up? You know, where do I get energy? What parts of my day or my job do I do that actually is like I'm not working at all, or I lose track of the sense of time? Those are great ways to see how you're aligning.
Got it. And I love the options and the questions and the things to assess. And all of that's feedback, right? It's really just feedback. And so oftentimes we think that we're afraid to ask the questions. We don't ask the questions because we're afraid of the answer. And the reality is when the answers come back, the answer is feedback, and that feedback tells us whether we should stop or go, whether something needs to change or if things are good. And the reality is once you get the feedback and once you're willing to embrace it and own it, then you can get resourceful around, well, what are my options? Because there's always options. And oftentimes we think there aren't. And it's like, well, I want more time with my kids, but it's just the way it is. And we commiserate with all of our other professional friends who also aren't having as much time with their kids. And so you just kind of, you know, but the reality is there's somebody that's worked it out and figured it out. And if one person can figure it out, you could figure it out, I could figure it out, we could figure it out, right?
Right.
But it's about really getting honest with that assessment and then being willing and committed to be in alignment. And once we're willing to do that, we can get resourceful around what are the options and what can I do, you know, moving forward. And then the L piece of it is look the part. And so I'll there's some folks who might be listening and get skeptical, and they're like, well, you know, I'm not a big on, you know, dressing or this or that, and or they may think it's superficial, or, you know, not everybody's into beauty and I don't wear makeup, and like there's all these reasons, right? And resistance that can come around look the part. But I imagine that when you talk about looking the part, it might be a little bit broader than what our narrow view could be. So share with us about what you mean in this place and how it can apply to anyone, whether they have the same value in dress and style as you do or someone else or not, right?
Sure. Yeah, so I want to begin with saying this portion of the work that I do, wardrobe, appearance, and presence, is not superficially driven. It is really born out of my own experience, yes, but also, you know, hundreds and thousands of clients over, you know, the last 20 years that I've been in business plus, is that wardrobe and appearance makes a difference, right? When you, I mean, research and statistically shows, you know, when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you know, people want to be around you. They want to talk with you. They want to, you know, have conversations. Research shows that when you look good as well, and, you know, define good, but you're more productive. Wearing certain colors can actually elevate your mood. Research also indicates, for instance, that the more formally one is dressed, the more that their abstract thinking increases. So if you knew this, pardon?
I said interesting.
It's very interesting. So if you imagine, so the most formal level of dress in business, whether this is your culture or not, might be a suit. So let's just say that. So that when you are dressed formally in a suit, research says that your abstract thinking increases 3 points. Now, I'm a person, based on my, you know, unique wiring and my whole history, I like facts. Facts tell me what to do and why not, right? So this is highly impactful to me that, wow, if I'm giving a presentation or I am in a place and position of negotiation, I want to dress the most formally that's appropriate for that scenario, because research has shown and brain science has shown that my abstract thinking is going to be increased 3%. So using wardrobe as a tool is really my place to come from. Doesn't mean you have to wear the latest styles or be a slave to fashion or any of those things. The other thing I want to say is, another way that your wardrobe can help you, again, is if there are no words to be spoken when you're at BNI or when you go into a networking meeting. If there are no words to be spoken, and you knew that your wardrobe and appearance was a communication tool, how would you use that? How would you dress differently to articulate creativity or visionary or strategic or leader? For instance, quick tip that I always share is that if you want to communicate more leadership or that you're in a position of authority, pop on a blazer, something with a lapel versus a cardigan. Cardigan is softer, it has a different appearance, and it really communicates more approachability and invitational, if you will. So you use your wardrobe to work for you. And lastly, one thing I know to be true is if anything else, just know that you just don't want your wardrobe to be a distraction.
Right.
You don't want that to be the thing that gets in the way of people seeing and understanding your unique genius. That you could be the perfect one for this role or this team or this opportunity. Unfortunately, if the wardrobe is a distraction and is communicating something completely different and you didn't have the chance to tell what is true about you and your skills and talents, it could be a big deterrent.
Got it. No, that's beautifully said. Beautifully said. And then the last one, living out your brilliance. Yeah. What exactly do you mean by that? And we'll wrap on that point.
Sure. Living your unique genius out loud is having the confidence to be who you are authentically with clarity and consistency and constancy in the world. So that means on a day-to-day basis, speaking in alignment, looking the part, engaging the part, going to activities that align with your unique genius, the way that you show up online, whether you're blogging or doing a video or just engaging, everything is in alignment. It's living you, living the brand called you, the truth of who you are out loud, with clarity, constancy, and consistency in a clear, focused, and powerful way. It's very affirming. It's very magnetic as well for those right people. By the way, when you're talking about building and harnessing your personal brand authentically, there are great benefits to that. I also want to say it's a beautiful thing also because you are showing up so clearly. It will also repel the naysayers, people who are like, oh, I'm not about her. I don't, for whatever reason, I don't like her philosophy on wardrobe, or I don't like her philosophy on, packaging the whole you authentically. Some people still want to be integrated. That was my whole life of integration. And it was very, very hard to integrate all the layers of me to really be who I am and show up. That really, even in the last 4 years has come more together. So you will attract the right, again, talents, opportunities, and situations, and you'll also repel. And either way, both ways you win. Both ways you win. Yeah. Yes.
So this is beautiful. And this is beautiful. And I told y'all that this was not the same old selling of yourself. This is the selling of yourself that creates a level of confidence that you're able to go out and truly make a difference in whatever role you happen to decide you want to play in the world. And so, Kim, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being willing to step up and be who you are so that we get to enjoy the brand called you. And I appreciate you sharing that wisdom with the rest of us as well. And in the spirit of sharing and generosity, Kim also has a free gift for everyone that's listening to this conversation. And so why don't you share what that is, and then I'll share how people can access it.
Sure, absolutely. So again, I'm not sure if I tidied this up, but really because the body of my work intersects between confidence building, mindset, wardrobe, and appearance, The Whole You, I was honored to co-author a book called Incredible Life. Top experts reveal how to create yours. My piece is a chapter called Fear to Freedom. And it really looks at many of the things that we talked about today: freedom to be your authentic self, freedom to dress to align, and really deals with some mindset pieces. So I'm excited to make that my gift. It's an e-chapter, and I'm looking forward to providing that for any of you who are interested.
Yep. So on the delivery page for this interview, all you have to do is click the link, and you'll be able to get immediate access to Kim's content and her words, and follow her, learn from her, connect to her. She's a beautiful soul inside and out, as I'm sure you're able to ascertain from this conversation, but truly is a beautiful woman, and such a delight to be in connection with and in partnership with. So again, thank you for your participation. And I'll speak on behalf of Kim and myself as well, as we wish you all a most amazing day. Be beautiful, be bold, be brilliant, be you, and we'll see you on the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.